Hi, it's EPY 150, Module 9 on communication. What words do you use? Consider the 6 words on this list, and I want you to consider how much they involvement on the part of an individual. So this is kind of a thought exercise for you to do as you're listening to me. So take the 6 words, planning, passion, obligation, preference, promise, and possibility, and put them in a rank order of how much you would actually be committed as an individual using these words. Putting the highest level of commitment at the top, the word that has the highest level of commitment at the top, and the lowest level at the bottom. So even pause and do this, and then see what you think. Write it down. How do you order these 6 words? Notice on the next slide how Dave Ellis in the image actually makes an argument about which one of these 6 words implies more commitment. And he's actually making the argument that obligation contains the least amount of commitment. You're obligated to do something, so you just do it. Possibility is another level of commitment. Maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. Preference implies even more commitment, and passion implies more commitment than preference. Planning involves more commitment than passion, and promising suggests the highest level of commitment. I think this is the idea behind the power process idea, employ your word. Consider what would happen in this world if people actually did what they say they were going to do. Wouldn't that make a difference? Wouldn't it make a difference in your life? So consider this as an idea that you can employ in different ways in your life. Communication includes many ideas. Some of the learning goals for Module 9 include practicing assertiveness skills, identifying underlying wants underneath complaints, identifying a writing process, defining plagiarism, identifying rules of etiquette, constructing I statements, and summarizing what you can know about verbal and nonverbal communication. These are all included in the subject, under the subject of communication. Now, many of you are already taking an English class. Maybe you're taking one now, or you have in the past. And really, this idea is presented to supplement what you're doing in English and other writing courses, not to replace it. So the first idea is that if you're really going to employ the best possible methods, you're going to use 3 phases of writing. And the way I see it is most students just go to step 2. They just blitzkrieg through and go, oh my gosh, a deadline is due, and so they rush and write their first draft is their last draft, and they never look at it again. So I want to suggest a process which would be an improvement on just doing one draft. So the first phase of writing really is to get ready to write. And I would say perhaps you don't have a really long assignment and you won't need all these steps, but this is really assuming a kind of longer assignment for your writing task, that you might have to write a list of what you need to get done and then generate some ideas. And then so that's kind of like brainstorming and then going back over your brainstorming list. Step 4 I have bolded because I think it's really the most important part of any writing assignment. It doesn't matter if you're writing a lab report for a physics class or a summary of an incident in a criminal justice class or an English essay or a political science research paper. You need to consider your purpose. And when you're considering your purpose in your writing, you're considering 2 things. Your argument, premise and conclusion, or your thesis, and your audience. Who is going to read this paper? To whom are you directing your ideas? So you have to take that into consideration as you're looking at this, and then you would go back and do some initial research and perhaps make an outline. I know this is sometimes a matter of personal preference, but it helps to structure your ideas, and then you can go a little bit further into doing research. But actually taking time to think through what you're going to say before you jump in can be very beneficial in a writing assignment. Second phase of writing is called writing the first draft. So this is all hinges on the idea that this will not be your first draft, that it's not something you're doing 1 hour before the deadline, but that you actually give yourself time to truly write a first draft. And if you're doing that, you will remember that the first draft is not for keeps, so that you can write freely, be yourself, and let your inner writer take over rather than your inner critic. I know many of us, when we start writing, the first thing that pops into our head is, oh, that's not good enough. And this is kind of a crippling thing. So whatever you can use, brainstorming techniques or affirmations and visualizations that allow you to do something ahead of time and then actually put it away. And if you can put something away for at least 24 hours, it will be very beneficial to you, because then you can actually see your mistakes. Try it. So the third phase is revising your draft. So you really want to give yourself an opportunity to look at something critically and go, what isn't working? Can I look for order and flow? Fix the sort of substantive organizational errors, and then you go through to prepare your paper to be submitted, which means you have to proofread it. And I think proofreading is a very difficult thing for students to do for themselves. It's very difficult for professional writers to proofread their own work. So this is where you have to employ some other techniques. Personally, I really like using the method of reading something out loud, because sometimes you can write a paper and the spell check will not correct usage errors. So you really have to employ a variety of techniques to proofread a paper. If you're lucky, you might be able to ask someone else to help you look at mistakes, read it backwards, read it out loud. Any way to get you out of your normal mindset that I can just rely on spell check or some automatic grammar feature, because they don't always work. Is plagiarism. And it's really this idea of using another person's words or pictures or music without giving proper credit. So plagiarism is very serious. It can cost you your grade, may even result in expulsion from school. Now, I've had students plagiarize before in my class, and I'm always amazed because I've even had incidents of students doing it a second time. So, and your professors have the right to either call you up on disciplinary charges from depending on the school's rules, or fail you for the assignment, or even fail you for the whole class. So you really need to understand the rules surrounding prevention of plagiarism. Easiest ways to learn how to avoid plagiarism is by learning the rules. And you have to learn how to use the rules whether or not you are quoting something word for word with direct quotations, or whether you're paraphrasing something that you've read in a book or a research paper. So the first thing you need to ask when you're in any given class and you have to write a paper is, what citation style does your professor require that you use? Most English classes, perhaps not all, but most English classes use the Modern Language Association format. Many social science classes and science classes and nursing classes use EPY format. So, and you might even have some professors from time to time that use the Chicago style. So it's a good idea to ask first, before you have to turn in a paper, what citation format is required in this class. Because I know that MLA and APA are the two most common forms of citation format that I've seen in undergraduate classes here in Nevada, I thought I would give you a quick summary chart. Our librarians at WNC have created great reference guides, and there's also some great reference guides at the Purdue University. But here's just a quick overview of the differences between Modern Language Association and American Psychological Association format. And you'll see on this chart that I have, if you have a direct quote in the body of your paper, right after the direct quote, for MLA, you're going to have the author's last name and page number. In APA, you're going to have the author's last name, the year, and the page number. Then, if you are summarizing an idea for MLA, you would have the author's last name in parentheses next to the summary within the body of the text. In APA, which is very common, is you're summarizing scientific research. You would have right next to the summary the parenthetical reference of the author's last name and the year of the research. Then, at the end of the paper, you'll have a full bibliographic reference in alphabetical order, but they have different names. In MLA format, it's called Works Cited, and in APA format, it's called References. The do's and don'ts of netiquette. Now, most of you who are listening to this are actually taking an online class, so you should be aware of some of the proper rules of what to do and what not to do, especially in an online class, in a professional environment, or when you are communicating with your professors by email. So remember some of these guidelines. I think it's important first to remember to respect people's time and privacy. Avoid using all caps, that sounds like you're shouting. And really consider the idea that email, online communication is missing a lot of emotional cues from the voice and from facial expressions. Don't send sarcastic messages. Don't make sarcastic posts. Sarcasm does not read well. Save that for your friends. One of my pet peeves is receiving emails from students without their signature. You know, I'm just supposed to assume whoever you are. Finally, you really want to remember not to dish out spam and to consider the idea that behind every computer, there's really a person who's going to be on the receiving end of your message, post, or text. So finally, as kind of an overview, communication includes a lot of different verbal issues. What is open communication? Having direct communication between the sender and receiver. How does someone's tone of voice influence how you perceive their communication style? Practice, especially in a heated situation, using I messages instead of you messages. Think about the difference times when you have to use indirect versus direct communication. How does personality influence your communication style? Some people are more aggressive and they like to argue, and some people get very upset by conflict. How does culture influence someone's manner of speaking? They might have different cues, verbal and otherwise. There are a lot of nonverbal issues related to communication. Body position. How are you holding your body? The whole work of Paul Ekman, one of the reasons why I wanted you to spend a little bit of time reviewing his ideas is that his research has been so influential in the field of communication and all the different ways that facial expression plays into our understanding of communication. Just fascinating, the implications from his research. Consider the idea of how much space there is between bodies, how some cultures are used to standing right next to each other, whereas others, they need a lot of space and distance. Consider the idea of eye contact and how that might be perceived differently. How are your listening skills? Do you always try and figure out what you're going to say as you're listening to someone? These are some of the things that the whole chapter in the Dave Ellis book explores.